We've been here before, wailing after another historic building has been torn down. But when Soyini Gray sat down with the chair of the National Trust to discuss the fallout from the destruction on Saturday of 4 historic buildings, she was told that the issue here is that the state buildings were destroyed without the necessary permissions having been granted.
On Saturday, several buildings in Sandy Grande were demolished. The old warden's office, the old fire station, the courthouse, and the Manzanilla post office. Since the National Trust is well versed in dealing with historical buildings being torn down without due process being followed, the chair of the trust was asked what they'll do to prevent a repeat of this in the future.
The first thing really is that we really need to get the corporations on board, the municipal corporations on board, to say these are part of our heritage, this is part of our local economy. We're talking a lot about heritage community tourism and heritage tourism. So which of the buildings you think they would like to? So we were now starting that process again, and so the first thing is we have to ramp up that process to get to each corporation once again.
The trust had written to the Director of Property and Real Estate Services Division in the Housing Ministry in June of 2015, acknowledging that some of the buildings were beyond repair. But she says a process that allows for the collection of artifacts was ignored, which in the case of the Manzanilla Post Office is particularly sad.
We would have still expected, because it was a heritage building, that we would have been told that they were getting ready to demolish, because it had some beautiful fretwork inside it. And what we would have done in our case, if we had known, is make arrangements to get the fretwork out of the building, because all fretwork tells a story.
And the real problem with Saturday's demolition?
Well, first of all, the only one that had any real permission was the Manzanilla Post Office, because the TT Post had indicated, I think in writing to the corporation, that they really couldn't keep that one. So that one at least had permission. None of the others had any permission from the state, because they were all state buildings.
And that permission had not been granted prior to Saturday's action. Ms. McDowell says the National Trust is doubling its efforts to build positive working relationships with the various regional corporations and their line minister Kazim Hussain. She says when the relationship works, they find communities working with them to protect heritage buildings and sites, citing Moruga, Rio Claro, and Diego Martin as good examples. Last November, the group Concerned Citizens of Sandy Grande, through their support to have the Sandy Grande Post Office designated as a historical building, they are working with the National Trust and TT Post to have it fully restored. Soyini Gray, C News.